Hey, Goodman here. Lots of new gear was added to 1.2, so today's video is going to talk about those pieces and what builds have changed. I normally do these kind of videos for HSR, so if you guys enjoy this in Endfield, I can keep trying to do them, but I'm going to be real, the gearing is so much more flexible in this game, so not all of these builds will necessarily be the unit's best, and teams and fights can change them. So yeah. And before we start, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor. NT is our first anime-style, truly open-world urban RPG powered by the UE5 engine, and it's out right now to play on PC, Android, iOS, PS5, and even Mac. It is launching with tons of content, as well as over 15 playable characters on launch, and with the launch comes an insane amount of rewards, including 400 free pulls by completing the game's content, outfits, and even a free Max Dupe S-class character. You can explore a gigantic city with tons of variety in many different ways and enjoy lots of different minigames and game modes scattered around. Race your friends, manage your estates, play mahjong with the squad, you can do what you like. And if you really want one of these cool character designs, well, pulling is pretty generous from what I can tell, with no 50-50 characters in featured pulls as well as a 90 pull guarantee. So if you want to try this fun new open world game by yourself or even with friends, then please use my link below in the description and enjoy. Launch is always full of tons of goodies, so make sure you don't miss them. Thanks, and back to the video. First off, we got the new Xiranflow and Qingbo sets. Starting with Xiranflow, which first offers a large 10% attack just for equipping the 3-piece. Then if the wearer consumes electrification or corrosion, the wearer will get a buff equal to the status level of the reaction consumed, giving an electric and nature damage buff for 25 seconds up to 3 stacks. The higher the status level, the more stacks you get from the consumption. The status level, as a reminder, is the level of the reaction, which can be forcibly upgraded with a unit like Feng Yi, but is most of the time the number of arts inflictions that you applied to an enemy pre-reaction. Now, the only real unit that uses this set is Feng Yi, as her whole kit is centered around consuming and reapplying electrification for her Sunderblade spamming. She can run light armor, gloves, and a baton, with Link Slab as her second kit in her ideal team comp. If she needs ult gain efficiency in her team, she can rock a second baton and run a Bonekrusha Poncho T1, or she can just swap the slab for a Zero Knight auxiliary arm. The only other two units that can consume electrification are Arknight and Wolfguard. Wolfguard doesn't care for these 2 damage percent bonuses, and I guess a DPS Arknight could use the 3-piece, but because the pieces don't have any agility, you lose out on a ton of attribute attack percent. I think she'd rather run Bonekrusha for damage, and most teams will use her with Frontiers anyway. We also technically have Ardelia who can consume corrosion, but yeah, we wouldn't run DPS Ardelia, right? What makes it so good for Feng Yi is despite you losing out on the electrification damage taken effect, her team is reapplying it so easily, and she gains other benefits, not just a set benefit. If we gave the max buff to another DPS but their team couldn't reapply corrosion or electrification, we would actually be losing a bunch of damage by consuming it, instead of keeping it and just running a better set. Anyways, next up is the Qingbo set, which is much more universal. We get our second combo CDR effect after Frontiers, and now on a more offensive set which provides a lot more flexibility. Doubling down on combos, we get a Bonekrusha-esque effect where every wearer combo skill gives us a stacking buff up to 2 stacks. But instead of 30% battle skill damage per stack, we get 20% all skill damage instead, much more universal. This buffs skills, combos, and ults, but not basics, as a reminder. For a unit that isn't fully battle skill focused, this is just a better Bonekrusha, provided the pieces are also good. But despite its offensive set effect, the CDR and mix of some main stats on some pieces makes this useful on more than just DPS characters. Frontiers is our only other CDR set, but it lacks arts intensity pieces, and its damage percent buff cannot be activated by many characters who'd love to use the CDR. Anyways, starting with damage-oriented characters, we have Tung Tung. Bonekrusha worked great, and still does, but if you're looking for an alternative, Qingbo is a pretty good one. You lose the 15% attack, which will be a DPS loss, but the damage dealt buffing her ult and ult tornadoes, unlike Bonekrusha, helps narrow the gap, and the CDR can be more useful for her teams to generate more whirlpools. It's more of a quality of life upgrade and may not even help, but it's good to mention. If Bonekrusha is maxed out or your rotation uses Zero Knight, you can keep those of course. Palika's combo in a lot of teams is all she's used for, that and her ults for Stanza, and reducing the cooldown of her combo with Qingbo can be major. Frontiers could do that, but Frontiers doesn't let Palika use 4 arts intensity pieces like Qingbo does. In a team with Fungi, this set is essential for syncing up their two combo skills together, and outside of Fungi, this can be used to get more electrification in a fight, or maybe sync up her electrification easier with your burst rotation. Pulsar Labs is a tiny bit more arts intensity, but it diminishes quickly, and I'd prefer Qingbo's utility unless it actively hurts your rotation. So feel free to stick with Pulsar if you're happy with it, but Qingbo does look nice. Finally, there's Wolfguard and maybe Gilberta. Wolfguard can use it for more frequent heat inflictions, but I think going full ult gain is still more flexible, as Zalae and Rossi both like combustion anyway, and getting to his ult resets his combo CD at potential 5 as well. Gilberta could reduce her combo skill cooldown and use Arts Intensity and ult gain pieces on this set, but I feel like this is a niche possibility for people with Gilberta's Sig in a team that already has a good Zero Knight holder. And Swordmancer on her would give her more stagger too over Qingbo's CDR. Anyways, the next gear changes are all just adding pieces to our current set. We first got 2 new Bonekrusha pieces, new gloves, and a new figurine T2. The gloves fit Aviwena like, well, gloves, but she does need the ult energy from Poncho T1 in long rotations or no ult start ones. However, these gloves are the first Bonekrusha set gloves that work well on her, which means we get the 3-piece and then can run Link Slap Kit for the most damage potential on Aviwena. As for the figurine T2, well, it seems pretty useless. It's like they wanted to give Fungi an alternative set, but Xiranflow is too good, and Bonekrusha doesn't have any other good pieces for her anyway. Then we have Frontiers, which also got 2 new pieces with O2 Tube T1 and Fiber Gloves T1. O2 Tube T1 was invented just to hurt Shahi players who max Artifice the original O2 Tube, as it offers a tiny bit stronger intellect and the same stat line otherwise. This is the de facto kit for second attribute intellect scalers now, I guess. Shahi that wants a max intellect would run these if she doesn't need ult gain kits. Alesh can also run these as intellect maximizes his rare Fin chances, and he actually likes the full set as a vanguard, so it works out perfectly. Not to mention the Fiber Gloves T1 now offer a Frontiers ult gain piece which also has intellect, which means we now get a build that combines damage amping and ult gain. You can now run 3 ult gain and still keep Frontiers, and there's gear swap possibilities in case you need more or less ult gain. The same setup goes for Akakuri and Arknight. It seems most vanguards can now rock this setup. However, all 3 of these can still use full ult gain setups depending on whatever your team needs. And finally, Pogranishnik has a new Frontiers mix. Arts Intensity maxing is still likely the way to go, either with full arts pieces and Hotworks or Swordmancer for extra stagger on top. But he can now also possibly run Frontiers ult gain chest, gloves, and run an O2 Tube kit with an Arts Intensity kit to get a mix of intensity, ult gain, and the team damage percent from the set. Also, has anyone tried Arts Intensity Qingbo on him yet? Our last change to gear is the new Swordmancer pieces, a new kit, new heavy armor, and new gauntlets. The armor first was made for Li Feng, Chen, and the Administrator with its agility, strength, stat line, and physical damage main stat. Li Feng and Chen can straight up just run it if they were previously running Swordmancer heavy armor. It's a direct damage increase and would only suck if you meticulously planned around the arts intensity on their physical statuses staggering. I doubt anyone did that though. The Endmen could at least use the 20 arts intensity, but a lot of their damage can come from non-arts sources, and so I'd rather run heavy armor T1, which boosts Crush's power anyway. Then we have the gauntlets, which are pretty much only made for Japan, but since he can run double arts intensity kit already, the arts intensity may not actually be that big of an upgrade or an upgrade at all, depending on how optimized your Crush rotations are. So just like Endmin, but in reverse. It's good to have as an alternative though, but not necessary if your previous gloves are artificed out. And finally, we have the Swordmaster daggers made for our little gremlin Chen. If you use all of her kit, then losing out on the physical damage from the flints does suck, but since we're probably aiming to go in, slap stuff silly with her ult, and dip, this can be a substantial damage increase for Chen lovers. With heavy armor T1 and 2 daggers, as well as new sword options, it feels like she's the Xiang Ling of this game, getting new goodies every patch. If I missed anything, let me know below, but I hope this little gear video helped out, and if it did, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching, thanks again to NTE for sponsoring this video, and have a good day.